Why do you always do that thing?
Do what?
That thing you do when you're fighting. And this thing that you do when you whip your hair when you're fighting with the arm and the hair, and you do like a fighting pose. It's a fighting pose. You're a total poser.
I'm not a poser.
Alright everybody, I am Kevin from The Real Movie Guys, and you are watching The Real Review, a series where we review and discuss all your favorite movies. And don't forget, if you like what you see and you want to see more, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel today. On today's episode, we'll be taking a look at Black Widow. Natasha Romanoff, aka Black Widow, confronts the darker parts of her ledger when a dangerous conspiracy with ties to her past arises. Pursued by a force that will stop at nothing to bring her down, Natasha must deal with her history as a spy and the broken relationships left in her wake long before she became an Avenger. Well, it's finally here, the kickoff to Marvel's Phase 4 release of films. After being delayed from May of 2020 due to the pandemic to now releasing in July of 2021 in theaters and the Disney Plus premium service, Natasha Romanoff finally gets her own standalone film. It's hard to believe that out of 24 films and starring in 9, it took this long for the founding Avenger to get her own film. While Black Widow delivers on the promise of having a Natasha Romanoff-centered story and being that turn-off-your-brain popcorn movie, the film is unable to live up to much more than that due to a weak villain, overdone CGI, tonality issues, and strange timeline placement prevented Black Widow from spinning her web and really drawing me in. It's funny to think after waiting so long for this solo Black Widow adventure, she can still feel like a side character in her own movie. That's not to say that Scarlett Johansson doesn't bring the fire as Natasha Romanoff. Over the years, she really has made Black Widow her own, making us feel when it counts and helping some of the strange plot choices make more sense due to her overall conviction. It's just that the rest of the cast playing Natasha's fake family really steal the show and are far more interesting than her. Florence Pugh plays Yelena Belova, Natasha's sister who has gone rogue from the Black Widow program. I would have to say her performance far overshadowed that of Scarlett Johansson. While I do believe that has something to do with the potential plot consequences, which I'll talk about later, I think Pugh really captured the perfect balance of naive likability and cold-blooded killer. Watching her struggle to find a new normal in her life and maintain the parts of her past that formed the only happy memories she knew is compelling stuff. David Harbour plays Alexei, aka the Red Guardian, who is the surrogate father of the two widows. His long yarns about his possible made-up past encounters with a certain star-spangled hero never got old. He really encapsulates the idea of having the best intentions but being unable to express himself. One of my favorite scenes in the film is when he goes to console Yelena after a family fight and realizes after a long story that leads to nothing, a special song for his daughter were all the words he needed. Rachel Weisz portrays the mother of the group, Melina, and delivers the right balance of dedication to her role as a former widow and conflicted mother figure who also felt that there was something more to the fake family outing. Overall, everyone works off each other extremely well. The performances and chemistry really shines through, making this typical superhero film have some of the most relatable and realistic family portrayals to date. My only negative with the acting, and this may be a personal taste, is I'm really getting tired of everyone being a jokester, especially during the serious moments. It makes sense for some characters to act this way. Tony Stark and Peter Quill come to mind due to their characterization, but when every character is quick to drop a joke to undercut a serious moment, well, it loses its charm real quick. To some degree, I might have been able to excuse Natasha's character in this since she's been spending so much time in the Avengers, and maybe it's rubbing off on her, but the other characters, I have a hard time believing they are this quip heavy. I also want to give a quick shout out to this movie's opening credit sequence. A melodically dark cover of Nirvana's Smells Like Teen Spirit plays over quick flashes of Natasha's past and training in the Red Room, reminiscent of a James Bond-like opening scene, setting a dark mood that we haven't yet seen in this Marvel Cinematic Universe, which herein lies one of my first issues with the film. It's nothing new. Now, I know some Marvel fans will be fine with this. It's everything we have come to expect from Marvel, right down to the story beats. Heroes attacked in a showdown with the villain, a thrilling chase in some form ensues. At some point, the hero group retreats and has a low-key, soul-searching moment, then we wrap up everything with an over-the-top action scene. Much like the comedic style mentioned earlier, it works. The only problem is Marvel is really starting to show their cookie-cutter storytelling methods, and for me, it's getting old. This movie starts off with a promise of espionage and a much darker story, akin to the the series such as the Bourne identity, but after the first hour, it eventually devolves into your typical Marvel film. I don't think this will bother most casual viewers of the Marvel franchise looking for that quick popcorn action flick, but fans looking for a newer direction to these films will probably leave disappointed. The villain of this film left much to be desired as well. Dreykov, played by Rainn Winstone, turned in a typical generic bad guy performance. Any attempts to humanize the character or add an extra dimension never come through. One of my biggest pet peeves was the underlying message of this character being essentially a cruel male effigy that the female lead has to destroy to prove she's strong. Natasha is already a strong character based solely on her actions, and the way they attempt to shove these gender politics into the film left me more uncomfortable, especially with the way Dreykov keeps her at bay while he divulges his evil plan. Women can and are strong. We don't need to see these overindulgent stereotypes to prove it. The second major villain and most heavily advertised adversary that Natasha faces in this film is the Taskmaster. Comic book fans would be very familiar with this character, with some of his clashes with different heroes in the Marvel comics and more recent iterations in the Avengers and Sony Spider-Man video games. I will go out on a limb here and say maybe even more so than the Mandarin reveal from Iron Man 3, this was one of the biggest missteps Marvel has made yet with a villain. Putting aside my thoughts on the character's comic book origins, everything from the fight scenes to ultimately identity reveal feels floundered. Wasted potential is maybe what hurts the most. You have a character that can mimic all the fighting styles of the Earth's mightiest heroes with a Terminator-like presence, but at the end of the day, the character is thrown away for a cheap and unfulfilling plot point. The best comparison I could give you without spoilers would be how Deadpool was originally treated in the X-Men Origins Wolverine film, and for those of you who have seen that movie, yes, it is that bad. If I had to boil it all down to what I think held this film back the most, more so than anything I've talked about so far, it would have to be this film's timing. Prequels are a tricky thing, and when being added to a franchise, if done right, it can add so much dimension to an already incredible story. Or, in Black Widow's case, it can just remove all sense and suspense for the character. If you're watching this review, then I already assume you've seen Avengers Endgame and know the ultimate fate of Natasha, and unfortunately, this film is unable to distract me or add any layers to make her demise that more meaningful. It's clear to me this film should have come out in chronological order, since due to her death in Endgame, this movie gives me little reason to care what happens to her since she has a future beyond this story. It's even clear once all the action ends that this movie was just being made to say, here, stop asking, here's your Black Widow movie. All of its events add nothing to the context of the past story, and while maybe that is the point to some degree, this film does a good job setting up a future hero for success. This film feels like a disservice to the character. Black Widow deserves her time in the spotlight, and this film just can't overcome the shadow cast by Endgame's events. It may seem like I'm being tough on Black Widow, but it's only because I really wanted to like this film. We see it all the time when potential is wasted due to poor decision making. While Black Widow may be a serviceable Marvel movie overall, I can't help but feel that a promising start and excellent cast could have been so much more if Marvel was more willing to take risks and show us something new rather than relying on a tiresome formula that we've seen recycled so many times. Natasha is an interesting character with a dark and complicated past. It's a shame that this film just wasn't interested in developing something memorable and special. This all leads me to my final score. I'm going to give Black Widow a C.
It still fits.
Oh my god.
Unfortunately, I don't think we'll be seeing a sequel to Black Widow anytime soon. It's hard to do when your main character is dead, but as they say in the comics, death is only a minor inconvenience. The best I can hope for is that maybe someday we can visit the troubled past of the Red Room and maybe get a story worthy of the Black Widow namesake. And also, let's just redo Taskmaster. Forget this ever happened. Trust me, you'll thank me later. If you guys like what you've seen here today, consider giving this video a like and leaving your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to stay up to date with everything Real Movie Guys related, make sure to hit that subscribe button and check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And don't forget, all you audio listeners at home, we are available on many podcasting platforms. Just search The Real Movie Guys, you should pop right up. Thank you again all so much for joining us on this episode of The Real Review. We are The Real Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. Catch you next time.